Good evening. This is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. Holy smokeroomies. Meeting of the Town of Berlin Planning Board. As a preliminary matter, please note this meeting is being recorded and that some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. The ugly band t-shirt you decided to wear tonight, or anything else you intend to or not screen share on your computer. Anything that you broadcast will be captured and recorded forever and ever, and may possibly wind up as a TikTok video to be shared amongst your friends and neighbors. This is Tom Sanford, Chair of the Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members anticipated on the agenda and are present and can hear me prior to me calling the meeting to order. Planning Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jay Teach.
Here.
Timothy Wheeler.
Here.
Carolyn McDonald.
Here.
And Tom Sanford here. Anticipated speakers we'll get to when the time comes. But for now, with a quorum of the board present, I call this meeting to order at 7:38 p.m. Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. This is an open meeting of the Planning Board being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. Specific information and general guidelines for the remote participation by members of the public can be found at the Town of Berlin website. The governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows and encourages us to participate remotely. For this meeting, the Planning Board is convening using the Zoom platform as posted on the agenda, which includes links for the public to join this meeting. Ground rules. As I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will invite each board member by name to provide any comments, questions, penetrating insights, and/or motions. Please hold all your insights till your name is called. Board members and speakers on the agenda, please remember to mute your telephone or computer when you're not speaking. Speak clearly and accurate to ensure accurate minutes are recorded. For any responses, please wait until you're yielded the floor and state your name before speaking. If board members wish to engage in conversation with each other, please do so through me to avoid multiple conversations happening at the same time. Lastly, please note that each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Thank you all for your understanding and cooperation. So we don't have any mail to speak of. There was a couple of notices from surrounding towns, and we didn't have any bills, and we took care of. Tim was gracious enough to contact Gatehouse Media to find out that we had already paid that bill, so we don't have any outstanding bills. So we have a few minutes before we had Richard Hanks up first. He's going to come and talk to us about some of the stuff that we were talking about for the last time, getting ready for the annual town meeting, the warrant articles and things like that. But maybe we can take up the Tim had sent around some non-conforming use. Actually, you know what? At this point, I'll entertain motions for accepting the minutes of last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask you to vote to accept the minutes of last meeting as recorded by Jay. Jay Teach.
Aye.
Timothy Wheeler.
Aye.
Carolyn McDonald.
Aye.
Tom Sanford. Aye. Thank you all for accepting that. So I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at the information that Tim had sent around yesterday about non-conforming uses. Do we want to take that up now?
I sent my comments.
You
Yeah,
did?
Jay sent some comments. Which,
Yep.
I deleted one of them because I knew it was going to be in the public record. I wanted to know whether we were also going to outlaw naked dancing and that kind of thing.
Really?
Oh, We do.
As pertains to the noise ordinance or?
No, the Massachusetts law that Tim excerpted for us had a whole section on it about adult use establishments and bookstores and all naked and all that stuff. And I know there's no businesses in town doing that stuff, but I've heard some of these agricultural farms we have in town get pretty wild at night sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's only at the end of Garland Street that we allow it, so.
Uh,
That's true.
Only
Well,
right
no,
after the
Van Door,
harvest.
right?
I think so, isn't it?
I think it was the end of Gates Pond and a little sliver over by Banador.
Yeah.
Oh. Wonder if the Sennies know that.
It doesn't touch Senny's property.
Yeah. So, I mean, the reason I just quickly went through and just shotgun sort of said, what happens if, and then I thought Jay came back with some interesting comments too, because before we meet with Richard, it probably would be helpful to extension. For some reason, I was thinking of extension as it's used in all this as an extension only of the footprint, but you know, it's clear that extension can mean moving upwards too, like Jay mentioned. So,
well, I wonder if it's that or is it extension in time, Tim?
oh, really?
I was thinking, because it doesn't make sense otherwise, because they've got all sorts of detail about lot lines and all that. I think it might be extending the period of allowance of the non-conforming use.
So where would you think that would be? What section, Jay?
So this is through
All through it
1120.
or just?
Yeah,
The word's used multiple times, both in the state bylaws and ours. And
right.
Yeah.
the only thing that makes sense to me is that it's, you know, someone's got a non-conforming use, so they ever have a time limit on them?
I know, but if you're saying a special permit to reconstruct, extend, alter, or change a non-conforming structure,
Oh, yeah, it does sound
To
like.
me, it would be, you know,
Large.
enlargement.
Right.
but
Yeah.
but up above, a change or substantial extension of a use. That extension, that means a physical extension too, I think. I guess I interpret all these as physical rather than a
Duration.
time element.
Yeah.
But I thought of it as extending along this, you know, extending the structure outward rather than upward. And like Jay questioned you know, how do we feel about someone going to a second floor when they only have one? That's an extension. And I think we talked about that last time. I'm more comfortable with someone extending up than I perhaps am extending out. So although I've sort of said, you know, do we just want to strike extension? I'm not sure I want to strike it if it, in all cases, would prohibit someone from adding a second story. But I'm open to
Well,
battering that around.
we're capped by a height anyways, right? In town.
Oh, yeah.
So they can only go up whatever's practical to a certain height limit.
But Lynn, I think Lynn's in the audience. Maybe she wants to come on now, but I know that was one of the questions they had on Oak Street was height. And, you know, because of the measurement of height being the midpoint from peak to, you know, plate, whatever, they were able to go, I think the Board of Appeals might have wanted to allow. So, but yeah, we do have that 35 feet. So
Pretty high. Most second stories aren't going to go that high, right?
No, but I mean, that allows someone to go 3 stories. I mean,
Right.
Right.
well, when Katie Bacon's place there next to the parsonage burned, my recollection is that was 2 stories. Michael was able to add a 3rd story to that. I don't believe there were 3 beforehand. So we have seen instances where people can add the 3rd floor and still stay within that 35-foot figure. So
Sure.
if we-
Yeah, a 2-story colonial with a walk-up attic would
Yeah.
be that height.
So then the question is, if we're comfortable with people going up, do we want to say, but it can't be more than 2 stories or something like that? If it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, you can add a 2nd floor, but it can't be more than the 2nd floor. It can't be 3 or whatever. I don't. Or do we even want to allow them to go up, or?
So I have an
Yes.
opinion on that. I think that over time, both historically and going forward, the size and quality of homes keeps increasing.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that, it's going to keep happening. And if we allow it to happen, we'll kind of be in step with the rest of the state and the world. And if we restrict it, I think it's going to cause all sorts of problems. Because I think if you come back, if you have built a house in the 50s and you came back today, you go, wow, these houses are all huge, right? Whereas we don't think of them that way. I assume the same thing's going to happen, 50 years from now. And I don't think it's a bad thing, if one house, like that one on Oak Street, so yeah, it looks a little bit out of character with the neighborhood, but I bet if you come back 10 or 20 years later, all the neighboring houses are going to have been upgraded and it's going to fit in. I think it's just a natural, it's going on all over town. Houses are getting upgraded and bigger and taller.
Yep. I definitely don't want to limit adding a 2nd floor to a single family home. I mean, to a single story home. But I do, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, I have issues with allowing a large home on a small lot. Like Tim, you have the only house that's for sale that's not new construction in town is right over by Tim. And it's a small little, I think, is it a 1-story house, Tim?
There is
Yeah.
access to the 2nd floor and there's some use of the basement. I mean,
Right.
it was you'd almost call it a split level to begin with, maybe. I mean, it was just a little structure. It's had a
Right.
little addition on the back and stuff, but yeah,
Yep.
no, you're right.
But it's a
small.
1/3 of an acre lot.
Yep.
So it's a pre-existing non-conforming. If somebody came in, tore that down and built lot line to lot line, front, back, left and right, that would be a large house on a very small lot. And I have seen it in town after town east of here.
But we still have an area ratio, right? You couldn't cover the whole lot with a house.
So do we have an area ratio
Well, we have a green area requirement.
of like 25%? Is it
No,
80%?
70 or whatever. I don't know.
Right, as long as there's something in, since we're working on rewording this anyway, as
Right.
long as there's something that keeps that from happening.
Yeah, the green area is 70%.
Yeah.
So there is some protection.
Good.
Couldn't
And there's
go.
all setbacks, right? That's the 2 things.
Yeah, but if they went setback to setback was Caroline's.
Oh, I thought you were saying lot line to lot line, Carolyn.
Well, setback to setback, more
Yeah.
accurately, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'd
Because
have to
even
keep 20 feet in the side yards. You'd have to keep 50, well, in an old village like that, you'd be able to allow your frontage to be equal to the average of the adjoining properties. So if everybody's house is 25 feet from the street, which is what you find in that neighborhood, yours could be that close, according to the way the bylaw reads today. And I don't have trouble with that. I mean, that's just consistent with the neighborhood.
Right.
So that does give someone
Oh,
more
great.
capacity.
Okay.
Yeah, but green area is 70%, so you can only cover 30% with your house.
Yeah, so if the lot's 20,000 square feet, you can have a 5,000 square foot footprint, right?
Right.
Is
I mean, that would
garage
be
included in that? Garage must
gigantic.
be,
Gigantic. I mean, compared to,
Most of the houses in town.
yeah, so it's, I mean, no one would max out the lot with the typical house that you build on that property in terms of green area.
Right.
You'd be more restricted by where you'd be able to locate your well and your septic and where those were going to be in relation to the adjoining properties, right?
Right.
But if they already exist as a non-conforming, and all you're doing is altering the building.
Well, and in that instance, the well is good. The septic is questionable probably. So that would be the more problematic issue, I think, for them.
Unless you put 2 bedrooms on and several dens.
With no closets.
Right.
So I didn't have trouble with alter, reconstruct. You know, that language doesn't worry me, I guess, because I think our objective would be to allow someone to reconstruct or to alter the form. But and Jay said, you know, we extend, I guess weren't you saying extend isn't defined?
well, I said I couldn't find a definition of it in what you'd sent from the state, so
Yeah, and
I think we got to
don't
come
know
up
if
with a
they-
definition.
Yeah. So that was the other question. If we leave the language, leave extend in, but define what extend means someplace in the, you know, in the back of the bylaw. But is extend used in a number of other places, so it would end up being problematic trying to define it so it fit the application we wanted to have it work with in terms of non-conforming uses, but wouldn't apply in some other areas. So maybe it still needs to be really through this section, huh?
I don't think we have any definition of less detrimental either, do we?
And now
No.
that is very subjective.
Yeah, and especially since there's 2 definitions or two places it's applied. It's less detrimental as far as the nonconformity, but then there's less detrimental in affecting the neighborhood or something, which is much more subjective.
Right.
So some people may just not like big houses. Does that mean you put a big house in, it's detrimental to the neighborhood? I mean, yeah, somebody's gonna have a hard time coming up with a construct to make that decision.
Right. Right. And one person might prefer a junkyard over a used car lot, like the example Lynn's been using. But
I got
somebody,
$170 from the junkyard today, so I'm totally all in with the junkyard.
yeah, I mean, think of the difference in the traffic. Compare, you know, a car lot could be significantly more traffic.
Yeah.
But it looks neater. You know, so
Not
whose
as cool,
definite,
though.
right? But whose definition of detrimental?
Well, Lynn, is it just, does the Board of Appeals just have a terribly hard time dealing with that subjective question about what is and isn't more detrimental?
We didn't invite her to the meeting, did we?
She's on.
Oh, she is. okay.
Right.
Just
And
muted.
I,
There you
oh,
go.
there she is.
I thought that the non-conforming uses, the whole section 1120, should probably be removed. If you have an underlying residential agricultural district and you have something like a reclamation center or a junkyard or whatever you want to call it, if they stop using it as that because it was grandfathered, do you want us to be able to put something else other than residential agricultural in its stead? And my thought was, you probably didn't. If you do, fine. The Zoning Board of Appeals, in no other area can they give a use variance. 40A is very specific and it says you have to be expressly authorized to do a use variance. And I'm just saying this is the one section in the entire Bible here that we would be allowed to make a use change.
Carolyn, do you want to let Richard in?
Absolutely. And I totally agree with Lynn that it should not be able to be changed to a different non-conforming use. That once the non-conforming use is done, then it's done.
But would we allow them to build back if something catastrophic happened?
Sure,
As long as the use didn't change?
as long as it was within the 2 years or whatever is required in the bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
If you want us to do that, we can do that. I'm just saying that the ZBA questions, this is the only place that we can give a change in use, because nowhere else is it expressly stated that the ZBA has the right to basically rezone a piece of land. But again, it's up to you folks. We're just bringing this to your attention. We are saying this could be problematic at some point. And before it becomes problematic, do you want to address it? And my second point was, and that's 1120 is only for non-conforming uses. It addresses only uses. It doesn't address structures.
Right.
The next section addresses structures. And then 1140 is for single and two-family residential structures. All we question is, in here, it leaves to the building inspector, if they want to reconstruct, extend, okay, alter, or structurally change. It's up to the building inspector. We're fine with that. But basically, we won't have to have any hearings for non-conforming. We would then have hearings on an appeal from the building inspector's decision, because he would have to say that, no, you can't extend it. And once he says you can't extend it, then it would go to the ZBA as an appeal from a determination by the building inspector. We're fine with either way. We just want clarity to know if he can do the extension, then we don't have to have a procedure for pre-existing non-conforming. It just goes to the building inspector. And if he says you can't extend it, you can't add on, you can't put on a second story, then it would come to us, but it would come to us in the form of an appeal of the building inspector's determination. reconstruction, altered or structurally changed, I would say is totally up to the building inspector. You know, if there's a fire or something, we don't need to get involved with them rebuilding what they have. But I would say that when it comes to using the word extension, then we need to go one way or the other, and we just want clarity.
What do you think, Richard?
In a little late, so I'm trying to catch up to speed as to what the actual question is on this. This is standard language that I see throughout most communities. So some communities may say that a structural modification that they can break it up into minor categories, that the building official can make a determination that if you're not encroaching closer to a property line but extending, say you had a jog in your structure or something, and someone wanted to fill in that void, you know, so one part of the structure is too close to the property line, doesn't meet the current setback, and someone wanted to extend and square that property off. Some zoning bylaws allow for a building official to make that determination that it's not more detrimental because you're not really getting any closer to the line. You're just extending that line of that structure. The only thing I worry about is the distinct role between my function and the ZBA's function, because I'm not subject to open meeting laws. You know, someone can come in my office, I can close the door, we can hash out anything we want. And at the end of the day, you know, there's only bylaws, it's a black and white document. So, you know, as I can look something up, it's allowed, not allowed, whatever the case may be. But when you get into the nonconformities, they really should go into the public sector of side of things, meaning that you want to do something that's different, you're non-conforming. You need a section 6 finding. With section 6 finding, National Law Chapter 48 says, you know, the section 6 finding is, are you doing something that's going to be more detrimental or not? That's the ZBA's role to make that determination by having a public hearing. It puts it into the public forum so that everybody gets, you know, all your neighbors and butters get notified. You can come speak for or against it. And again, that's where to me, it just shifts out of my hands and it gets elevated into the public realm. Again, I'm not open to public hearings or meetings. I don't have to abide by the same rules that you all do as a body. So again, I can walk into my office, I can close the door, we can talk about whatever we want. We're not taking minutes, we're not doing anything. We can hash things out where we can. But again, when you come to these non-conformities, the key is that it now becomes a public domain thing, that, you know, the other stakeholders are involved because they're not meeting the current regulations that everybody else can meet. They fall into a different realm. So that's where I see things as far as this goes. Again, Templeton has some language that minor, and I think I'm not sure if it's only for single family. I think on the single families, the zoning enforcement office can make the determination that, again, you're just squaring off that property. Nothing's getting any closer to the property line. It's just that as you go further back along the building line, it's you know, you're just squaring that property off, and over there I can make that determination, say, yeah, it's minor. Does that help?
So in general, then, if a structure needed to be reconstructed, a residential structure needed to be reconstructed or altered or structurally changed, Lynn would be comfortable with the building inspector making that decision?
And that's in your under 1141.
Right.
That's in there now. That's my call on a single family residence.
But extended, what does extended increase your authority beyond where the ZBA would want? So, I mean, like we were talking before, someone comes in and they want to add a second story to a single family house. That's an extension. And according to this, you could feel comfortable with go ahead and making that determination and allowing that to happen.
Yeah, but not on the second floor one, no. The second floor one is increase in bulk. So,
So-
again, I think the extension one would be the analogy that I spoke with earlier, that again, you have a jog or something, you just want to square that line off. I would consider that more of an extension, but everything I've always done in the past, that if you have non-conforming structures too close to a lot line and you're adding this full second story to it, that's increase in bulk, and that would typically require a finding from the ZBA that it's not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what is already there, or to other similar structures along the street.
So when you use the word bulk, does that imply a significant increase to total square footage of the structure? So you'd allow a certain percentage of increase to square footage, but if it exceeded a certain amount, you'd say, no, you've gone too far now?
Well, if you had a single story house and you try to make it a two-story, that's increase in bulk. Now, say if you had say if you had a cape and you just adding the dormer on or something, that would be minor. I don't think I
Right.
get too fussed over something like that.
But if I wanted to jog out in the back, I had the land, I could meet all the setback requirements.
Then you're good to go.
Okay,
Because you're not increasing any non-conformity. You're staying within the required setbacks.
and even though it's a pre-existing non-conforming building. Well, no, it isn't. It's the lot that's not conforming.
Well, there's different things that get into non-conformities. There's a non-conforming lot or is a non-conforming structure.
Right. So if my lot's non-conforming, but my structure conforms, and I increase the size of the structure to the point where I could even double it, let's say, by increasing the footprint, and still conform to the setbacks and all that, and the green area requirement, you'd say extending the footprint would be all right, but extending the height wouldn't?
If the structure was conforming, meeting the setback requirements, you can add the bulk. It's when that structure is too close to a property line, that's what's making that structure
Yeah, okay.
non-conforming.
And so that's in the case of residential uses.
Right.
But Lynn, are you having trouble with the building inspector having that authority in the case of residential uses?
I think the ZBA just wants to know what the authority is. Okay. Personally, I think, again, my problem with the non-conforming uses and my only problem with the 1141 is the use of the word extension and extended, because that's the bulk of what we do when we do a non-conforming, is they're increasing the size of the house. Now, you could say floor area, but please, before you do, take a look at your definition of floor area, because we've run into some problems with that. The interior floor area of a dwelling unit, exclusive of basements, stairwells, halls, bathrooms, corridors, attics, walls, partitions, and attached accessory buildings. Would you like to do the computation on a house?
No. I've had to do them for in-law apartments, and no, I don't like it. So on the non-conforming single and two family, again, it talks about when you read the paragraph, non-conforming single and two family residential structures may be reconstructed, extended, altered, or structurally changed upon a determination by a zoning officer that such proposed reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change does not increase the non-conforming nature and the issue of a building permit where applicable. So that paragraph is telling me that, again, I might have a non-conforming structure. I'm saying I don't meet the front yard setback, right? I meet my side yards. I meet my rear. I can extend that. I can go at the back. I can go out the side. I just can't come forward. I just can't go. I can't increase my non-conformity. I can't get close to that line that made me non-conforming.
How do you differentiate between a non-conforming lot, which of itself would make the unit non-conforming, and a non-conforming structure?
Well, the lot's gonna be non-conforming because it's not gonna meet current frontage and area. So that's what's gonna make the lot non-conforming. It doesn't meet today's standards for a conforming lot. The non-conforming structure, again, it's going to be the structure was planted prior to a setback requirement, and now it's too close based on today's standard. You know, you had some timelines where you had smaller lot sizes and frontage requirements and smaller setbacks. So when those houses were built, they were conforming, and some of them might predate zoning, so there was nothing to conform to. So when someone's trying to do something now, we look at the latest greatest of 200 feet of frontage, 80,000 square feet, and so much setback on the front, so much to the side and the rear. So that's where the non-conformity comes into play. Now, to that point, what we had in Townsend, what they added in Townsend quite a few years ago was that there was issues with, we had a project called Timberley Park where it was all 100-foot frontage lots, 20,000 square feet. But yet the zoning now required 3 acres and 200 feet of frontage. So there was a spell prior to me that every person that want to do anything, you want to add a deck, you want to do anything, whether the building official was sent to the zoning board because they were non-conforming. They didn't meet any standard by. So what they did was they added language that you only had to comply with the setbacks in existence at the time of construction. But if you predated zoning altogether, then you had to comply with current. So again, those different timelines when your zoning was less area or less setbacks, you only had to comply with what was in existence when it was constructed.
So do you think that a house that would not be allowed to be built on the existing lot, let's say it's a quarter of an acre, could double or triple in size?
It could if you meet in the current setbacks, and as long as you don't have a percentage of lot coverage that would exceed the percentage of lot coverage. So someone could build a big mansion on a small lot if they meet the setbacks, and as long as they don't exceed the percentage of lot coverage.
And that's fairly standard in the towns that you work in, that approach, right?
That's pretty much standard everywhere. Yeah. You know, so some communities, where they're all built up, there's no raw land left at all, and you know, people are going in buying little capes and little ranches and knock them down, and they're trying to squeeze as much house on them as possible. There's some communities that they have size limitations, that if you're gonna knock something down, you're gonna build something back up, they limit you to a percentage of what was there currently, because they ran into those problems where, oh, I only need to be 5 feet off the property line. Well, I'm going 5 feet all around, and I'm going to put the biggest, tallest structure I can on here, and I'm going to finish the basement too. And I'm going to have 10,000 square feet when I'm done.
That used to be in this bylaw too. It said you couldn't increase it by more than 50%, I believe, at one time. Do you remember that, Tim?
Yeah, and so that was my next question is, should we reinstall that type of limit? Have you've seen that in some towns, Richard?
I haven't seen that in a long time. That one seems to have gone by the wayside. I haven't seen that in quite a long time, and I can't even recall where I've seen it. But that is one of those limiting factors, again, if you're concerned about undersized lots, and you could have something that if you have a non-conforming lot, you can only expand by a certain percentage. You know, so that's not unconceivable to limit it.
Right, because you could have a conforming lot with a small house on it. Someone could come in, take down the 1,000 square foot ranch and put a 10,000 square foot house on it. As long as they, you know, stayed within the lot lines, the setbacks and the percentage of green space.
Right.
Because there are
Mhm.
definitely lots, large lots in town with small houses on them.
You mean conforming large lots? You mean-
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
but so with this, what we're talking about would only apply in the case of a
of a
non-conforming
non-conforming,
lot.
The
right,
non-conforming lots. You
So
know, I think it was 1965 up to 1973. Your only requirement was a 30,000 square foot lot, and I think 100 or 150 feet of frontage, so 150
Right.
feet, I'm pretty sure. So you had that spell from 65 to 73 where, you know, you got a fair amount of, not a fair amount, but you got some lots, 30,000 square feet, 100 feet, 150 feet of frontage. So those are all non-conforming lots. Depending where they place a structure on the lot at the time, you know, if someone went to add on, as long as they're not encroaching into the green space, right now it's fair game, they can do that. And right now, as long as they're not exceeding the percentage of lot coverage, they could put a much larger house on it, as long as they can, you know, fit it on there.
So if we were to revert back to the percentage increase for a pre-existing non-conforming residential structure on a lot, that the structure could only increase 50%, that wouldn't encumber you necessarily. That wouldn't make your life miserable.
It would not, but you got to keep in mind that non-conforming structure might only be 600 or 700 square feet. So you're gonna restrict them to a 300 or 400 foot addition.
Right.
Where my neighbor, he might have a 2-story colonial on it that's 2,000 square feet. So why can't I get to 2,000 square feet?
Because so you're saying, yeah, but part
You
of
know,
our
that-
is
that-
part
that-
of our objective to continue to keep certain structures in town small so that they're in a price range that is affordable to that crowd that isn't qualifying for affordable units but can't afford the McMansion. Is this a way to keep people from being priced out of town?
Again, the only thing I would worry about is someone with a really tiny house, and now you limit them that they can only expand by 50%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if they doubled, and I don't know if you could put a cap on it or something like that, but you know, typically that house is going to be a small house if it was built in 65 to 73, I would imagine. You know, again, when we talk to small ranch and small cape, and you know, even if they double the 1,000 square foot house, it's nothing compared to what's going up by today's standards.
So is there a way we can put a 50% figure on it and that allows you to make that decision, but if they want to go above it, they have to go to the ZBA?
You could do that. You could have that up to 50% increase is a zoning enforcement officer call. And if you want to go more than that, then it's a finding by the ZBA that it's not going to be more detrimental than the rest of the street.
And you put it back in the public arena again.
Right.
Right.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
and that still gives the opportunity for someone to make their 1,000 square foot house a 2,000 square foot house,
Yeah.
but
They
the
gotta make
neighbors
case.
get a say at that point.
Right.
Yeah, they can express their concerns that you're blocking my sun, or you know, the house is hideous, it's way too long, it's way too whatever.
Right.
Not that always weighs into any decision by the ZBA, but you know, I guess the bigger thing would be if everybody else on the street is 1,500 square feet, and now someone comes along like, well, I can fit a 4,500 square foot house on that, and I'm going to tower over everybody. Well, then that's detrimental to the neighborhood. Is you're just really stuffing it to everybody.
What do you think, Lynn?
Or the neighbors get a say and the
Yeah.
neighbors come in and they're like, no, let them do it because then I'm gonna do it next. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you know,
You set the precedence. Thank you. Now I can go and do
yeah,
the same thing.
exactly.
You know, the other way to deal with that, I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable with this because you could have a 10-acre property, you know, it was a farm and it had a little tiny farmhouse on it. And someone, you know, is gonna have to spend a bunch of change to get the property and keep it single.
But see, that lot conforms though.
No, but the house may be, the setbacks may be too small to the lot line or something.
Oh, you mean, so, yeah.
And
But
so,
nothing they do on that lot. I mean, they'd extend the unit back away from any nonconformity.
oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
If they got that much acreage.
I'm just thinking you might, you know, trying to engineer this
Right.
to the 50% idea, I think it's a little complicated, which is maybe why we dropped it at some point. And I'm wondering whether a better solution is that Richard, when he gets one of these requests and he's got any concern about it and thinks it really should go to a public hearing, he could just say, okay, I'm rejecting it, so appeal it. Right?
Well, I need a basis. Again, my world, I read the bylaws black and white. You either meet the requirement or not. So I can't just arbitrarily. I don't like you, Jay, today.
Yeah, well, but the detrimental. I hope that's not true. The more detrimental thing is not a way for you to push this over to the ZBA. You can't just make this determination that you believe it's more detrimental and.
No, actually, I think when it comes to that judgment, I think that by law, I think that is a ZBA determination. I don't think I have that. Again, the language that's on here now for single family, you know, you know, this section's been approved by the AG's office. I can grant an extension or alteration as long as it's not increasing the non-conformity. So again, any part of the structure that's conforming meets the setback and they want to add on to that area, I can bless that. But I think when it comes to the non-conformity or the detriment to the neighborhood, I think that's the public arena and the ZBA's call.
Okay.
I think what the ZBA wants, if I may, is clarity. 1130 non-conforming structures. Does that apply only to non-residential?
Yes.
Okay, it should say that. Because all it talks about is structure. Okay, so it should be non-conforming structures in a non-residential area or something to that effect. And then with the 1141, I think that anything you can do, Rich, to absorb stuff and not have them come to us is great. But I think we just need clarity as to who does what. And I don't think the way this bylaw is worded now, it is clear.
So what I've seen elsewhere is on your 1130 non-conforming structures is that they'll incorporate in what your 1140 is. So under 1130, it would be an exception, and then it would get into speak about your single and two-family dwellings. You guys just have it broken out, and that's why I quickly said that 1130 is your commercials and not your single families, because you have a whole nother category that deals with your single and two family. So me as the reader, as the enforcer, I would look at 1130 and I would instantly say, well, there's my commercial properties, because you broke it out as 1140. And then you talk exclusively about single and two family, which is an animal all by itself. 1 and 2 family, they're synonymous. It's their own breed. There's no other category that they fit into. We in building code or zoning. So my take as zoning officer is I see those as two distinct pathways. And again, other communities under your 1130 equivalent would now you'd have a D, an exception to what this whole other things mentioned about, the special permit, the reconstruction extension and all the other stuff. So it's just that you guys have it broken in a different format. Again, rather than just have an extension, an exemption to that 1130 rule, you just have it as 1140.
And in 1141, where would you see the ZBA coming into play?
Only if they were doing something. So the very last sentence, that the proposed reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change is increasing the non-conformity. Because I can make I can bless it if they're not increasing it, the non-conformity, but if they're increasing the non-conformity, that's the ZBA. And again, my example of you got a notch in a building and you're just trying to square that up. I can make that call that at no point are you increasing the non-conformity by getting closer to the property line. But again, they say there, we require 20-foot side yard setback and they want to go to 15 feet. Well, they're increasing non-conformity. Well, they say they're at 18 feet because they're non-conforming on that side. Now they want to go down to 15 feet. So that would be an increase of a non-conformity.
Right, and then 1142 would send them to us if they don't agree with you.
Correct. Yep.
So if you leave 1140 alone, and then in 1130, somehow address it to all other zoning areas other than residential agricultural, correct?
Well, your agriculture is going to be an animal all by itself as well. But the 1130 in my world, this is addressing everything except a 1 and 2 family.
It just doesn't say that.
No.
So what if we just changed the title to non-conforming structures dash non-residential?
This language sort of follows through with chapter 40A. I'm pretty sure that it has similar language in the state zoning act. So it kind of follows through with that.
And how do you feel about 1120? Rich?
Oh, I love non-conforming uses. So non-conforming uses is so we have use categories and like if you go to building code. So when someone's trying to build something, code is always trying to protect the occupants. So on the building code side of stuff, we really deal with use groups. So you have assembly use groups at your churches, your schools, not your schools, your churches, your movie theaters, places where you get a lot of people. So the code's really trying to protect those people. And then you got other uses, like you got mercantile, you got business use groups, you got storage, you got factories. So there's a lot of different use groups. So when this gets into change or substantial extension of a use. So an extension of a use is I'm making widgets and I need to make a lot more widgets. So I need to extend my use capability, whether or not I'm adding onto my building or if I'm expanding into a portion that's not being used. So that's my extension of use. My change of use, again, is, you know, I might have had an old car dealership and now I want to make it a dance hall. All right, it's not the same thing. You know, the car mechanic would have a couple cars come in, they work them all day. Now all of a sudden you get 30 kids coming to dance class 5 times a day. That's a different, that's a change of that use. So that's where that change comes in. And that's getting back to, again, that the Board of Appeals has to look at, you could be going, they could be going the other way. They could have a you know, a dance hall that makes a lot of noise. They open till 11 o'clock at night, make a lot of noise, and now an accountant wants to move in there and just do paperwork during the day. So he's going to be a lot less detrimental. So that's a change of use that's clearly less detrimental. But if you went the opposite way, that again, that accountant office, and now someone wants to put a dance hall in there. So that's where your change of use comes in.
Well, let me give you my prime example that the planning board has already heard.
Okay.
We have a scrapyard junkyard in a residential agricultural zone on Colburn Road.
Correct.
What if they wanted to come in with a car dealership?
Well, they probably have that ability right now. That's that particular one, because if they have a class 2 and a class 3 license, the class 3 allows them to dismantle and sell parts, and I think the class 2 would allow them to sell cars. So their license that's there now, and if they had been doing it all along, so they're already there. Now, say if
Well, one of the feelings of the zoning board, folks, including myself, is that if you're in a residential agricultural area and for whatever reason you have a pre-existing non-conforming use, a car dealership, and or you can sell used cars. We used to have a law that was up to 5 or something. Do you think that it should revert back to residential agricultural use, or do you think the zoning board of appeals can change the use?
so, are you talking that if they stopped using it for a time period and then they wanted to reopen? Or,
No,
you're just talking that they're already doing something that it's non-conforming because it's not allowed use in that zoning district by today's standards, so they preempted zoning. So that's a pre-existing, that would be considered a legal pre-existing non-conforming. So they're legal to be there because they're pre-existing and non-conforming. Now, if they want to expand
or
their operation
change,
or change their operation, so what would be an example of them changing if they wanted to?
put in a strip mall.
There you go. Yeah. So that would be the clear change of use, and that because it's a protected commercial property because it was there in existence prior to zoning. So at one point it was either legal or you just didn't have zoning to control it. So again, that's why I threw that first word in. It's a legal pre-existing non-conforming, and they're allowed to keep operating because again they preempted zoning or they complied at one time. But now if they want to change and do something totally different there, they want to take everything out and now they wanted to manufacture parts instead, or like you said, put in a strip mall and have a 7-Eleven there. That's a complete change of use, and that would have to be looked at by the ZBA. And you'd have to make a determination whether you thought that use would be worse than what's there now. And worse could be in the form of traffic. It doesn't have to be by noise. The zoning board has a lot of latitude on that as to what they feel would be a fit for that replacement. And again, and I think that's why they don't overly define how detrimental, because it's allowing the board to have latitude as to, if you had a strict definition, not everybody's going to fit that cookie mold as to less detrimental or more detrimental. So zoning boards have latitude because it's not overly framed out as to what that terminology means and how you're gonna apply it, so.
Well, I
you-
think in the case I cite, Rich, because we no longer allow junkyards in
Correct,
the town, there isn't anything that we allow in town that wouldn't be less detrimental.
say they want to stop doing junk cars, and so when they start selling lawnmowers and snow blowers, would that be better? That would be less detrimental. Still a
Well-
commercial use, not allowed there.
My feeling is at the time the bylaw changed, they were allowed to stay doing what they're doing
Correct.
because they pre-existed the change in the bylaw.
Correct.
Wouldn't it be reasonable for them to revert back to residential agricultural
Oh,
if they
if
stopped do-
if they wanted to stop doing a salvage yard, they want to stop selling cars, could it be residential? Absolutely, because that is
No, no,
now.
no, 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 no,
No, no,
no.
no,
I'm
no.
saying
Should
not
it?
give them the option of us changing what they can do there.
No, you don't, you, if I'm following you, you couldn't tell them that we don't like what you're doing because you're pre-existing non-conforming. So now we're gonna tell you that we want you to become residential agricultural. Is
No.
that what you're getting at?
I think what she's saying is if they decide to stop doing that one particular activity, that the only other thing that could happen is that
Oh,
it
the only other
becomes
thing.
residential agricultural, that they
No.
cannot be a non-conforming business of any kind afterwards.
Oh. No, if they want to come before the board and they want to do something different other than sell used auto parts, they have a pre-existing non-conforming commercial use there, so they're allowed to continue something there, but only by a finding from the ZBA that what their new proposed use is going to be commercial, that is, it will not be more detrimental than what was currently there.
So Lynn, if I had a pre-existing non-conforming structure, well, a use that was in a structure in a residential zone, if we eliminate 1120 altogether, and my business goes out and I want to put another business in there that is less detrimental, if 1120 is gone, I can't do that. I've got a structure that's been a commercial structure in town for 50 years, or 60 years, predates zoning. That use has gone out of business. I bring another commercial use in, but if it's in the residential zone and it was non-conforming, I can't do that, right?
Right.
So I've got this structure that I've been paying taxes on in town that's commercial. I'm paying 26,000 for decades, and now the building's worthless to me.
Right.
Okay.
So
But
what
the-
I'm.
But the
And
land has value as residential.
Yes.
Yeah, but
And if you're thinking about something like next to you, is that what you're thinking of?
No, that's in a commercial zone, so, that's not applicable, but
Take that building and put it on a residential lot someplace
Yeah,
else in
okay.
town.
yeah, let's do that.
Let's say it was residential agricultural
Right,
is the
Right.
underlying zoning, okay?
Yeah.
right.
Yes, if you eliminated this first portion, you could not change the use.
Yeah, so if Village Power had existed in a residential zone and they'd been there for 70 years, but they went out of business and the structure still existed and they were gone, I couldn't bring another use in that was
Commercial.
commercial.
Other
See,
than
I-
another lawnmower.
As a landowner
Color.
and a property owner and it seems
Well,
like,
I think it's broader than you think it is, okay? I don't know how you would classify that property. The use that was on it, but you could call it retail sales. You could call it retail repair. I think that as long as the use is the same, it would not be an issue.
but
it's
we're saying
only-
if it changes and becomes less detrimental, I can't do it. So I could leave it there with lawnmower noises all day, but I couldn't bring in a convenience store. They generate the same amount
I
of
hope you
traffic.
wouldn't, because there's not enough parking.
Well, I got parking out. You know what it's a
So-
good, I struggle with that one though.
Well, all you'd have to do is wait 2 years and they don't use it and they lose it anyway.
Yeah, but so the question I think we were wondering about was, we do say that we have A and B. B, change or substantial extension of the use, or B, change from one non-conforming use to another less detrimental non-conforming use. So are those different, and is change from one conforming use to another less detrimental appropriate, where change or substantial extension of the non-conforming use that's might be considered more detrimental isn't? I don't,
Yeah, I see your point. I just would like clarity, okay? So if what you folks decide, you are deciding for the town, and you have a lot of things to take into consideration. And I think that what you come up with, so long as there is clarity and there is no question as to who can do what, where, when, why, and for what they have to apply.
So my role is, if someone's coming and applying for something and they're non-conforming, then I go with these sections. And then I give them a marching order, whether I think that it's a building permittable item or if it's a ZBA special permit. So,
Well, the bylaw, the way it is right now, the zoning board of appeals is the only one that could allow them to change the use.
that is correct. Change of use, right?
And
So,
you were happy with that because you think there should be a public hearing.
oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah. And the other thing that does too is that it solidifies it and to the property owner. So if I issue a building permit based on a poor zoning determination, I've got 6 years look back that I can all of a sudden like, oh, I should never have given you that permit. you violate zoning in so many ways. So I can rescind that. All right. But if the ZBA makes that determination, it's in a public hearing, you make the determination, there's a 21-day appeal period. Once that appeal period is over, no one can come back forward and challenge that. It's done. It solidifies it.
Well,
So,
if you can rescind it, then I think you should take them all, because that's honestly, one of our problems is follow-up, okay?
yeah,
You give someone permission to do something, and
and
then they don't live up to it. And that's why
Yeah.
we have the 5-year rule for, like home-based contracting and so forth.
and they all flock in every 5 years, right?
No, they
Yeah.
don't. Well, you're responsible for that though, Rich, right?
I own it all. Yes, I do. So you're 1120, 1130, 1140. A lot of places combine that all into one. So a lot of them will say pre-existing non-conforming uses and structures. They combine those two together. And then your 1141 is an exception to your combined 1120 and 1130. The only thing different I'm seeing is that you subcategorize them all into their own unique category where a lot of places blend it and it'll say pre-existing non-conforming uses and structures may be only be altered, changed, reconstructed by finding by the ZBA. So none of this is foreign to me. It's just a different format.
But it all appears to be workable, right? There's nothing glaring that you're like, oh gosh, I wish this was changed. I can't do my job.
No.
Okay.
But to Lynn's point, it can get confusing to a board that, you know, you meet as needed and everybody coming for you is going to be a different circumstance. You can't have too many that are all the same, other than in-law apartments or something. So you're always going to get those odd ones that come in that they're trying to change a use, and it's like, well, what do we do with this one? And or they're trying to add on to a pre-existing non-conforming structure and there's a commercial use.
But your point before, when we started this conversation, is that you'd rather see that go before the ZBA because then it puts it in a public arena where questions can get asked by neighbors or what have you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So your 1120 and your 1130, those need to go for a Section 6 finding under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, that it goes to public arena and the ZBA holds a public hearing and they can solicit input from the other stakeholders, and they render a hearing, and then there's appeal period, and it gets recorded in the deed. So that completes the whole loop. It solidifies it. And if you don't attend the hearings and you don't appeal within your period, there's nothing an abutter can do after the fact. You know, we've got Highland Ridge up on Highland Street, and one of the residents showed up a year after that was approved. Well, actually years afterwards, and said, I don't like it and I want it changed. And I'm like, well, where were you when well, I wasn't available. I couldn't make it. And it's like, well, your time has come and gone.
Right.
Well, I'm going to go talk to the bill. I'm going to do this. Well, okay, but your time has come and gone. They've purchased the property. They've expended a lot of money based on the decision that they got from the board, and they're moving forward. And now you want to stop them on the 11th hour. That's why everything gets recorded, and there's the appeal periods, and it was all held in public. Everybody had the right to go and speak for or against it, and
vote on it.
And vote on
Yep.
it. Absolutely. Yep.
In that particular case.
Yep.
I know that doesn't really square with what you want, Lynn, but it seems we're back to your original.
I
wanna
want
get rid of
clarity.
1120. Yeah, I know.
We do what you ask us to do.
Yeah, we can do some cleanup here, and I've been looking at other towns and I see what Richard's talking about, where they make it flow in one section rather than, you know, spreading it out. So we could certainly look at those options as well. I can send around what a couple towns around have done.
Well, and also, Rich, you probably know that they allow the ZBA to change zoning. You know, make zoning exceptions. You know, put a gas station on a residential agricultural lot. Right?
Who does that?
Maynard.
So yeah, some places may allow use variances, and you don't. So actually, well, you're gonna have one coming up soon. Timmy, down by you, that house that's for sale with the two barns behind there at the Unpleasant.
Oh, yeah, across from the post office.
Yeah, across the post office, but it's right there where South and everything comes together. It's for
Oh.
sale. It's advertised as commercial, but the back building is in residential zone.
Yep.
So bond company, they do infrastructure work, and they got a 3-year project coming up in Hudson. And they want to either purchase that or lease it to store their construction equipment and their piping and their supplies. So that's going to be their staging area, and they want to use that to go work on their project in Hudson. So I told them we don't allow contractor yards, and they said, well, can we go to the ZBA? And I said, well, you can go to ZBA for anything you want. You know, that's your prerogative. I said, but we don't allow use variances. I said, so I don't know what you're applying for. So they, you know, they want to move forward with that. And I said, well, you can. I said, but I said, we have no provisions for a use variance. So
Yeah.
again, you can spend your money, you can go before them. I don't know if anybody sees fit that, well, you're only a 2 or 3 year project, so it's not that bad, but I don't see it being an allowed exception, because there's nothing in here that says that it's, you can grant the use variance for it. Because right now, there's nothing being done there. They're advertised as commercial, but as far as I know, it's not being used as a commercial use. So
Right.
it wouldn't be a change of use, they're just trying to add a use that's not allowed.
I think that would be an uphill fight.
Yeah.
You know, if I was a neighbor, I would be not in favor of that.
Yeah, do I want to listen to pipes clinking and trucks
Right,
coming back at the end of the day and then leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning and
right. So I
drop
mean,
the
I could go make a case that's really not, it's not allowed, and yeah, you can appeal it, but you're asking the zoning board of appeals to make a determination on something that's not allowed. So if I was a neighbor, I'd be like, what basis do they have to make that determination? I don't see it. You
right,
know?
right. Well,
So,
I tried to tell them that, and they said, well, we like to try it anyway. So I'm like, okay.
oh, they're trying to get somebody to sleep at the switch.
And they just want to use the residential portion for that?
No, they just want to use the whole grounds because there's several big buildings there. I guess the person that put the buildings up, he had a lot of cars in there and stuff, personal cars.
Right.
And there's a good sized parking lot and stuff. So they want to use it as a staging area. They figure that they can put all their pipe and supplies there, and they can put the trucks in there, and, you know, loads of fill if they need a stone, and the excavator if they're not using, or backhoe. So
There's a
construction yard.
Right, there's a conservation restriction on a fair amount of that open land
Yep.
also.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
The uphill battle has just become Everest.
Yeah.
So if you hear from them again, you might want to point that out to them as well.
Okay.
Carolyn, is Susanna Roberts on, with us? Has she
Uh,
joined the meeting?
I do not see her name.
Okay. She was gonna, mention a couple of other things. I'll leave it to her because I'm sure you won't finalize your ATM tonight.
Correct.
No, but if she's got stuff she wants to send us, she ought to send it to us before our next meeting, because that meeting will be right before we've got to
Right before we
submit
have
stuff
to,
for the
yeah.
warrant.
Okay, I'll send her a note and tell her that. I know one of the things she wanted was a definition of a contractor's yard, because there isn't
Yes.
one.
You
Do
got a
you
good
like
one?
that
Richard?
idea too, Richard?
Yeah. We don't have a definition of that.
You got a good one from somebody else?
No.
Oh.
Sorry.
And a definition of a sales room.
Right,
We do have a definition of a home-based contractor,
right.
but not what a contractor yard is.
And what's a service establishment? I don't think there's a realistic definition there.
No, there really isn't.
And we had an issue. Remember down on Gates Pond Road, the woman with the dump trucks and so forth?
Yep.
She claimed that her pickup was her private vehicle, even though it had the name of a company on the side of it. So, private vehicles of a business, there's an issue about that. And floor area. Because I know Richard must agonize. There's got to be a way to simplify.
Yeah, lake times width.
computation.
Yeah, anything inside the walls.
Yes. The first time I saw that, I mean, you gotta be kidding me. I gotta minus off the thickness of this, of the interior walls, and I gotta,
And the
So- so-
bathrooms and the
the bathrooms.
hallways, stairways.
so that one actually trips a lot of people up for the reason being that they're trying to add an in-law right to their house. And you envision the in-law, it can't be more than 35% once you minus off all the other stuff. And the in-law is usually very modest. It's, it's a small kitchenette and a living area and a bedroom and a bath, right? So when you minus off the stuff that doesn't count, bathrooms and the hallways and all that stuff, the main house usually has a very large master bath or something like that, or a lot of hallways on the second floor that connects all the bedrooms. You pull all that off and it really shrinks the size of that house. And it really impedes the size of that in-law apartment drastically. So I've had people, and you've probably seen it, that they've gone for in-laws. They've actually had to finish a room in the basement just to up the size of the house in order to get the in-law to a size that will accommodate their mom or dad. So that's been a stumbling block when you start pulling all those criterias off of gross floor area. So
Even how wide the walls are too, because you have to
Yeah.
eliminate the walls.
right.
Do you
Right.
subtract that stuff all off of the in-law also? Or is the
Yeah,
in-law all of it?
but it's not proportional.
Oh,
Right, so I'm gonna throw mom in the in-law apartment. I'm just gonna give her the basics, right? But my house is big and I got the big master bath and I got long hallways and I got closets and everything else, so it's not proportional.
Hmm.
It's not even trade-off. The master bath is way far bigger than what mom and dad's gonna get in their little studio apartment. So it's just not prorational. So it just throws a number way out of whack. And what we're doing is we're forcing people to increase the size of their house by finishing a room in the basement just so they get the size of the in-law that's usable.
Huh.
So
Not
I
only that, but it's no fun computing it, let me tell you.
no.
we'll have to write some
So-
software.
What was the
you
point
go.
of, Tim, do you know what the point of wording that way was?
That goes back way before. That's got to be from the early days, because I don't remember adding that. We just kept it.
Right.
But I mean, we can look at all of these. Yeah, and if Sue wants to get in touch with us about questions, I'm looking at Templeton's bylaws right now, because obviously those are very good.
Not necessarily. Well, they allow your in-laws by right. They don't need a special permit, so they allow 1 or 2 families by right. They allow in-laws by right, and they allow accessory apartments. And there's no real, when you read the definition between in-law and accessory, they twist the words around, but it really ultimately comes out the same thing. And the only requirement is that it's subordinate in size. So, you have that 35% factor, and they just say as long as it's subordinate in size. So 1 square foot less and you're subordinate. So they don't really define it more than that. Townsend used to define it that it was the house and the apartment. The apartment couldn't exceed 35% of the house and apartment combined. So you take the square footage of the house, say 2,000 square feet, you take the what you wanted to do for the apartment, say it was 1,000 square feet, you add them together, take 35%. So you could have like 1,050 square foot accessory apartment. So it's prorational based on adding those two units together and taking 35% of that. They've since changed it and they capped it, so you can't be more than, I think, 850 feet. So they went with a cap size. So, but again, if you could clean up that definition on gross floor area, I think that'd be awesome. If you just made it floor area, that'd be so much simpler. Because when they come through to me, it's like I have to, all right, well, this bathroom's this big, this hallway's this big, and I think these walls are this thick, and you're backing all that stuff out of there.
Right.
And then
Right,
now
so
later,
who even measures it? Is it? You know,
Richard
assuming
gives his
it's,
best guess.
I
Right, Richard?
take the plan, I start scaling it, I measure everything out, and it's literally an hour later and like 5 pieces of scrap paper to get to the end.
and that's assuming you have plans on file.
Well,
They have to submit them.
yeah, you ask them to submit them, or you know, you can go to the file and see if they're even remotely close, but I think the majority of them recently have been on new construction anyway. Someone's building a new
Right.
house and they're bringing mom and dad into the equation, so. But
So that they can
You could do
afford
a
it.
floor area ratio, not a gross or whatever. We can just say floor area ratio and then cap 850 square feet or 1,000 feet or whatever we feel comfortable with.
Mhm. Yep.
So they can build up to 1,000 feet.
Oh, you can take a look at contractor yard, sales room, service establishment, and floor area. And
Okay.
I'll ask Susanna to send a note if there's those or others that she is. I know she's interested in property owner for a home-based contracting business, that it has to be a property owner, but I know you kind of poo-pooed that last time, so. I'm gonna rent out all the bedrooms in my house to people that can be home-based contracting. I won't participate in the hearings, though. Okay, guys, well, I think Rich and I have given you enough info, right?
Oh, this is great.
Thank you.
Definitely.
No, glad to help, and if you're done with me, that's okay.
And
I
by
don't
the
believe
way,
you.
I've put in for someone to build a database so we can catch all those people with their 5 years being up.
Well, that'd be nice.
If I
Yes,
run
sir.
into a problem, there's some ethical issue, because 2 of the people on the ZBA want to do it. You'd be willing to be the supervisor, right?
Absolutely.
They just need someone to, because they're gonna build an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That we can search by property and so forth. We have some data back to 1960. So I
Wow.
think it would be helpful to you if you could go look at an address and see if a special permit was ever issued, or, do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and actually, once you create that list, we could probably incorporate that into our permit software. So, once we bring up the property on our permit software, then we could probably see that there's a special permit.
Download it, yeah, download it. Or, and
Yep.
Leanne will maintain it after, I mean, but we can't have her building it because I think it's gonna take a while.
Yeah, that'd probably be worse than gross floor area.
But I think it's worth it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, it will be, because there's so many people flying under the radar. And, you know, and for me, only being a couple of years, you know, I'll drive by places like, well, they pre-existing non-conforming. Do they have a home occupation business that just expired? Who are you? Why are you there? You know,
Yeah.
and to try and research everybody out, and, you know, that it's just beyond capability. But if there was a list, I know at one point I got the list of business certificates that Eloise had, and it was a pretty extensive list, and a lot of them had expired. So her database goes back a long ways, but, you know, start going through the list and trying to figure out who's who, and are they still there? Aren't they there? Did they have a special permit? Because the other thing is, a lot of people would just go to town clerk and register their business, whether or not they're allowed to be there or not, because all they wanted was a business certificate so they can register their equipment or do whatever. So there's a lot of people that just flew under the radar just by circumventing our department. We require a use permit. We want someone to come into us first and tell us what they're doing, and we tell them if they meet zoning or not. But there was a long time span where they would just, and it's not Eloise's fault, because her only requirement is that she wants to know who it is and what you're doing that at. So there was never a cross check between zoning and business registration.
Well, I just wanted to let you know that's out there, but you may have to send out postcards or something to all these people, because there's a lot of people out there that are beyond that 5 years.
Well, you better start drinking a lot of coffee because you need a lot of people.
I'm done.
Yeah. It'll definitely be a benefit if we had that list. And then, start with blocks or something, to take 10 or something, send out 10 postcards and we'll get one back, and then we'll send out another 10 and we'll get one back, and it'll be a while to rope them all in.
And then you send out a cease and desist and then they come in.
Then they come in yelling, screaming, and Lynn always told me I could do this.
We love you,
How dare
Richard.
you throw my mother in the street?
All right, we good?
Think so. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
All
thanks.
right, thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay, so moving on with our agenda, we're a little bit behind here, so we will transition. Is Greg Tremelli in the audience?
Yep.
Caroline, can you elevate him, please?
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
See. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, very good. Well, thanks for having me.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Good. Good.
So not sure where you would like to start. I think you guys have seen the email I sent with the questions, and just we can go through the questions or however you want to do it.
I think let's take the questions in order, and we'll start with number one. So you had emailed us, and why don't you give us a little background of what the question is and what you want us to determine?
Sure. Given the Article 30 from last spring, updating section 716.8, added an additional level of oversight and, change to the zoning bylaws. And my question is really rooted in, does that bylaw apply to my driveway?
In terms of, you feel that the driveway, because it was in existence before this, doesn't need any, if you make a change to anything or do anything to it, then it's pre-existing and therefore you don't have to come before our board?
That's the question.
Okay. So the way that I read the section is that, any change, structural addition or modification beyond general maintenance would require anybody to come before our board. So there really isn't a grandfathered status because any change would require, you to come back and talk to us. And the reason that this is my personal opinion, the rest of the board can chime in, but my opinion is that because the driveways are approved in a public forum, that material changes should be addressed in a public forum. So, but I'm willing to listen to the rest of the board members to see what their feelings are.
Just one quick comment on that. I mean, I just listened to an hour of pre-existing, non-conforming discussion about how new zoning bylaws, and how they don't apply to previous, lots, whether they conform or didn't conform, and all the different nuances in there. So
The difference that I will offer you on that is that it's beyond those questions that were being asked and posed were other boards and zoning enforcement officer making determinations. Whereas this is falling under the purview of the planning board. So we would say that, my opinion, again, would be that would be the difference between those. We've been asked to offer guidance on, other people being able to do their jobs. And if you listen to what Richard had said, if it elevates to a certain threshold, then it should go back to a public arena or a public forum where other people can have input on what's going on.
In that, if what was proposed did not meet existing zoning.
Well, there was a bunch of different things talked about. So if you have a non-conforming use and you are making it, if you are within, if you're changing a use, it's still non-conforming, it's not more detrimental or less detrimental, you want to make that determination in more of a public arena than Richard saying, yeah, that looks like it passes the sniff test and you can do what you want.
Yeah, and that's what Richard was saying, is that if,
Right.
if the change does not cause the driveway to become non-conforming, then it's his call to make.
Yes and no. But again, that the original underlying permit, the original underlying approval of the use was done in a more public format, more public arena. So that, for me personally, I think that should at least come back in a public arena, at least before the planning board. The planning board can make the determination whether this elevates to a public hearing and get more stakeholders involved and get more input from people before they make their decision. And if it's a minor change, then yeah, I think the planning board can make the determination amongst themselves.
Well, it does differ from the way servient landowners have, in their rights and what they're able to do with their property that they pay taxes on. So,
Correct.
I mean, it's interesting.
I'm willing to listen to other members of the board, whether they have the same feelings that I do or not. I mean, I'm not the only arbitrator here.
Tom.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, the salient issue about this is whether, we're talking about the speed bumps, whether the speed bumps
Hold on.
are,
We're talking about whether it's a grandfathered use or not. The first question.
so, but what is grandfathered?
Nothing's grandfathered. If you make a material change to it.
No, and that's what, so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about
Material change. Yeah.
is the change to the driveway a material change? If it's not a material change, there's nothing to grandfather.
If no one does anything to the driveway, if they don't alter it or anything else, there's no need to come back before the
So
board.
any change at all
Any change
is a
at all.
material change. A flower bed along
it-
the edge of the driveway is a material change.
In my opinion, if there's a change in location, length, height, material composition, then it rises to the level where you have to come back, at least talk to the board about what you're doing.
Well, I certainly didn't have that level of oversight when I bought my property.
But the use was already permitted in there. Right? The driveway was already in existence when you bought your property.
And that's the premise of my question, where, I'm not asking about changing the use of the driveway.
Right?
So the use isn't changing.
Right? But you are making an alteration that fits into that definition, correct?
We're still talking about question one, so not
Sure.
specific to speed bumps, but if I were to make an alteration that fit within the existing building code, I'm not quite sure why I would have to
Well,
come back
if-
to the
if-
planning board for that.
If it's beyond general maintenance.
Well, who invented that?
Well, it was written in and voted amongst the townspeople.
Right, that's my point. I didn't have that restriction when I bought this property.
But this now exists, right? And it says that if you make a material change, then you got to come and see us.
So that's the premise for the grandfathering. Because that rule was not in place when you bought the property,
Correct.
you feel it should be grandfathered.
Right.
So you're saying that, correct me if I'm wrong, that anything that you do to alter this because that existed before this rule was adopted, that we don't, there's no governance, there's no, you can do whatever you want.
No, I'm not saying anything.
Okay, then I'm confused.
I'm saying the new provision doesn't apply to this driveway.
Because the driveway existed beforehand.
Correct.
Yeah, but see, that's not how I read this statute.
It's a new statute.
Correct. But you were making you were proposing to make an alteration to an existing driveway, right?
So an example might be hypothetically, if I wanted to make the driveway wider, if I wanted to, make some other, change to the driveway, I'm allowed to do that.
Not unless you come back before the board, the way this is written.
And that is likely an overstep.
I don't see it that way.
Is that only on a shared driveway?
But in this
So-
particular case, it's common driveway. So
No, I
any common
understand,
driveway.
but so the statute is for common driveways.
Correct.
And if there's an HOA and the members of the HOA agree to the change, it still has to come before the planning board?
Mhm. Yeah,
So when I bought my house that had a governing legal binding contract
Mhm.
that explained how that driveway could be used
Yep.
in conjunction with the laws of the state and what I'm allowed to do with property that has an easement on it.
Right,
Those are the conditions in which I bought my house.
correct.
And
But that driveway was permitted by the planning board, right? And if there is alterations in length, width, height, we want somebody to come back to us and say, okay, why are you doing this? Why are you altering this? If you physically move that over, we want to see whether you're going to dump water into the public way, whether there's going to be runoff. All of those things were calculated when the driveway was permitted.
right, and it was likely permitted through the zoning enforcement officer.
No, there was a public
Through
hearing.
special permit because it's a shared driveway fundamentally.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, all right, so I hear what you're saying. That's not what I've seen in precedent.
I'm willing to listen to other board members if you guys want to say something, but I think that this is pretty cut and dry.
Tim, you're muted.
You're muted, Tim.
Oh, good. My sense is that the planning board has authority over those substantial modifications. But I think the point that's raised is relevant, and I think it probably would be prudent for us to say to town council, we've added this language to the zoning bylaw under the common driveway section. Does it apply to driveways that were permitted prior to the change? You know, is the total volume of common driveways that have been permitted over the last 15 years, are they exempt from this particular addition to the bylaw because they preceded it? You know, I mean, it's a simple question. I think town council would give us an answer real quick as to whether we have the authority to say, no, you're modifying the structure essentially, you know, width, whatever. Can we rule in on that, or do we have to, you know, stay on the sidelines if they already exist? Because otherwise, that whole section doesn't make any sense. Any common driveway that we permit at any point in the future, unless we somehow add some addendum to the agreement that we make, that says we can oversee modifications, we wouldn't have any opportunity to participate at all if they made changes in the future.
I would like some clarity about the term material changes as far as our what you know, if someone if the HOA decides to paint the driveway white, do they have to come before us first? If you know, I mean, what constitutes a material change?
Well, we don't specify color. We do specify in the design specifications width, surfacing, and driveway bed, which I think applies here, slope and intersection with the public way, and a few other things, turnouts, turnarounds, all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like question one, Tim, you had suggested a question to town council. Does that question get tabled then?
Yeah, I mean, how do I feel? I feel we have some authority. Am I so confident that I'm willing to say there's no option otherwise? No, I'm not. That's why I just as soon say to town council, what do you think? You know, that's usually where I go when I begin to be befuddled by an interpretation of the zoning bylaw. And this is a simple question, I think. I mean, they'd come back to us pretty quick. You can chase Margaret and say, can we have permission to seek town council's advice and get it?
Okay, so would resolution to this question then get kicked to a subsequent meeting after that conversation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so.
Okay. So now specific to question two, I guess pending what happens in one, or let me think about this for a second. If one is in limbo, does that obsolete 2 and 3?
At this point, I would say yes.
Yeah, because the answer to 1 and 2 dictates what
It
we do.
dictates what we're going to decide on
yeah.
2 and 3, yeah.
Okay. It may be. So if what you're saying is the board feels that speed bumps are a substantial modification, then question 1 matters. If the planning board says it's not a substantial modification, then question 1 can take a back seat and be answered at a later time.
You're muted.
Sorry. Has the ZBA weighed in on this?
Yes. There was a unanimous vote from the ZBA that the speed bumps did not change the slope or grade of the driveway.
I don't think it changes the slope or grade, but I think it changes the, what's it called here, material.
Um,
You want to recognize
has-
Lynn?
yeah.
Surfacing and driveway bed, it says.
Can you hold your thought, Jay, for a second? Because Lynn has raised her hand and. Go
Hi,
ahead,
folks.
Lynn.
I just wanted to say that the ZBA did not make the determination. The determination was made by the building inspector. And his decision was appealed by one of the neighbors to the ZBA, and we upheld his decision.
So if I were to ask the planning board if removing the speed bump is a substantial modification, what would the planning board be inclined to say?
The ZBA didn't have the benefit of town council in their decision, did they?
No, we didn't. We just made a decision that the building inspector was correct in his determination.
Okay.
So
I
Lynn,
think
why was the issue of surface and driveway bed, which is B in the list of requirements for a common drive? Why wasn't that on the list? I mean, why was it only slope and slope and grade? Seems to me it's more about surface.
It has to do with height.
But it says in the bylaw, the surface shall at all times, well, it says should be of any material deemed appropriate by the planning board in consultation with the fire chief, highway department, and chief of police. So I'm presuming the surface that was deemed to be appropriate was just asphalt, not asphalt with speed bumps on it.
I don't think you're looking at the most recent bylaw change.
Oh, I may not be looking at an older book. So is that gone? I was 18. New bylaws are so expensive, I couldn't afford to buy one.
Cheaper to download and load it and print it.
Right, I thought I'd done that, but I can't find it. Must have been too big.
So you did see the case law that I forwarded to you that has upheld speed bumps in common driveways across the country at the state Supreme Court level, as well as the Mass Land Court.
Yeah, and that's all interesting, but you know, I'm not opposed to speed bumps as a traffic controlling mitigation. What all I want to know is that, you know, what is their composition, you know, where they're going to be located. Are they reflective to, you know, aid in nighttime so people don't trip over them if they're walking or whatever? Is there any signage that alerts people who are coming to deliver a package or something like that, that there's a speed bump there, just some sort of codification of what we're getting. You're making a change to a surface or a way that was approved by the board. I think the board should be able to, if it's added or subtracted, know what's going on. That's
It's a
all.
change, it's a change to property that I own. And the laws,
You own it in common with other
no,
stakeholders.
I own it in title and right.
So, okay, so just the speed bump, maybe I'm confused. The speed bumps only exist where you own that portion of it? I thought it was an easement across all of the properties.
Yeah, and the way easement law works is that the dominant estate that traverses your property with the right of easement does not own the property they traverse. That's very clear.
Okay,
So the underlying property still belongs in title and right to the servient landowner, which would be the other lots traversed. And so if those servient landowners want to make changes to their land, provided that they do not substantially interfere with the dominant estate's ability to use the right of way, they're allowed to do it. And that's the case law that I sent you.
yeah, okay, well, I didn't, that wasn't what I got out of that. What I got out of it was that there was, speed bumps were mentioned in the determinations and things like that, but.
No, these
know.
cases were specific to speed bumps where in right of ways and in easements,
That were used to
people
control traffic flow.
in private ways
Yeah,
on private property.
yeah.
And when contested,
Oh, I'm not contesting them.
no, I'm saying when these folks that previously went to the land court in 2020, in 2010, in 2002, in Massachusetts, the land court upheld the use of speed bumps in that common driveway.
So
in
two
those
out of the
cases.
three cases that I reviewed and read, both parties had no issues with the speed bumps as a traffic controlling mitigation. They seemed appropriate for what was being done.
The court found it to be appropriate, otherwise there would not have been a lawsuit.
No, it wasn't. Each one of those cases was just not about speed bumps.
There were other factors, but speed
There were
bumps
a
were certainly.
majority of the other factors were what was being contested. Speed bumps were a minor part of those.
It doesn't matter what component they contained in the suit, they were in the suit and upheld by the land court.
And I'm saying that I agree with you. I don't see there's any issue with that. What I'm saying is that with the section that's written right now, the planning board would like to know what's being done. If you're going to remove and replace or whatever, then I think the planning board needs to see what's going to happen. That's all.
And I would say that affects my property value as a landowner who bought a property with an HOA document that outlined exactly what our rights were in the common driveway prior to this ordinance that passed. And this change should not apply to this driveway.
Well, I think then when town council gives us their opinion, then we'll have more clarity on it.
Okay, so
Yeah,
back.
I'm over my head with this stuff. I mean, I'm not comfortable trying to figure out heads or tails without talking to town council to get some sort of sense as to how to interpret all this other noise, but that's only my thought. I just as soon say, I don't have a feeling I can answer any of these questions until I get some advice from town council. Because we could spend all night here, in my opinion, and I wouldn't feel comfortable about making a decision because I'm over my head.
Okay, well,
But that's just
then-
one vote, you know, that's just one opinion, so.
well, I think it does make sense to consult with town council prior to a vote. So just as a one quick anecdote, the town did send fire trucks down and emergency vehicles and already determined that there was no, impact to access. So just, I guess I'll leave you with that, and then we'll catch up with you on a future meeting then.
We should
Well,
have a determination before the next meeting. So if you would like to be on the agenda for the next meeting, and the next meeting is February, hold on one second.
1st and 4th Tuesday,
No, second
No.
and,
2nd,
second and
and
fourth.
4th. So 8th.
Yeah, so it'll be the 8th.
Yep.
So if right now I could put you on the 8th at 8 o'clock, if that works
Sure.
for you.
Yep. That's great.
So we will continue this discussion till then, 8 PM on the 8th. And if some reason we
Update
don't
on
get,
the on the issue of surface. The 21 bylaw is the same as the 18.
okay,
So I think the issue, I looked at it, I assume the issue was driveway surface, which is what would, the reason you'd be interested in that is for suitability for, traffic, right? It's the reason that the state is so, the state makes it so difficult for you to put any kind of traffic mitigation in on a road, particularly in front of your house, is because they feel obligated to make sure that traffic is not impeded unreasonably. So,
Yeah, well, I sent all the notes, and I can send more if you want more examples. I only sent 6, but I can send more if you want.
well, the
Where,
examples that you sent were speed bumps tend to slow cars down right where the speed bump is and not for the entire distance. And
Well-
they were examples where there was a specific location where the traffic needed to be slowed down because it was too close to a house or whatever.
yeah, quote, "We find the speed bump in question does not substantially interfere with the plaintiff's reasonable use and enjoyment of their easement." That's right out of the, appellate level court. So-
it's interesting and I can appreciate that, but to me, well, let's see what town council says.
Yeah,
Maybe
it
this
is interesting
broken up.
because preventing our, having a say or, nobody on the planning
Don't
board.
misconstrue me. I'm not
Can you let me
precluding.
finish for a second here?
Sure.
What I'm talking about is safety, right? There's
Mhm.
there's kids, or there used to be kids that live here, but so we have an interest of safety, and it's a
Absolutely.
legitimate interest.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's a valid concern.
Absolutely. I'm not discounting that. And it may be very appropriate. And speed mitigation and speed bumps may be the solution to that.
We have an
Which-
interest in safety at our horse farm because we have horses on Sawyer Hill Road, but we can't just go put speed bumps in. The state
On a public way.
requires that we cross
Yes.
some threshold of need before they would allow that.
Yeah, so that's a public way and completely different.
Correct.
I think the rules for private ways.
Are completely different.
I think we should be looking to as you're looking at state case law, we should be looking at state precedents for how they handle traffic mitigation.
Sure.
I mean, obviously there's a difference in scale, but the principles should be the same.
So
I
if,
would be, go ahead.
you can finish your thought, because I was going to change to another thought. So go ahead, finish your thought, please.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. So if there is any, I'll let you know, I'll notify you through email or what have you, if there is any reason why we don't get an answer back before the 8th. Okay. Just to let you know, and then we should have an answer from town council, but for any reason we don't, we'll let you know.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Night.
Okay. That's the last.
I'm happy to reach out to town council if you want,
You
or
will?
maybe, or I can ask Margaret. I'm going to talk to her tomorrow in the morning.
If you have an
I'll
opportunity. to
get
talk to her,
permission then.
please.
What?
I'm sorry. I was going to say, if you have an opportunity to talk to Margaret, could you please ask her
Yeah,
if we could talk to town council?
no, I got a call scheduled for the morning, so I can ask her right then I'll get back to everybody and let you know what she says.
Okay. Yeah, I think some guidance, because if this is, well, let's see what they say.
Hopefully town council is more responsive for planning board issues than they are for conservation issues.
Well, that's why I put that caveat in to make
Yeah.
sure the expectations, if, for whatever reason, we don't get an answer back, then I don't want somebody's expectations to be.
You need to know how to ask, Carolyn, that's all.
All right, well, I'll let you know my question and I'll have you ask it.
Setting yourself up.
So there is still an audience member with a hand up.
Okay. Hi, Scott.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
I just wanted to, maybe correct some misleading statements that were made by Greg Tremelling in his previous statements. As being one of the other owners on the easement for that driveway. Specifically, the statements of one, that the emergency services have found that there is absolutely no impediment. First of all, that is not true. I mean, the only thing they did was demonstrate that they could just drive a vehicle down here, regardless of how difficult or slow it may take. In fact, during the Zoning Board of Appeals, Dennis Bartlett, who was a head of the emergency services for ambulance for years, even stated that he would hate to ever be the one in the back of that ambulance going down that driveway. So the statements about the emergency vehicles I found to be very, very misleading. The other one, which we've heard many times regarding our appeal before the Zoning Board of Appeals on the building inspector's decision, what was that was specific to only one small item, and that was where in the bylaws for common driveways, it's clearly stated that there should be at no point should there be a slope greater than 15%. And the speed bumps which are clearly much more than a point, had a slope of 50%. That is the only thing that was ruled on the zoning regarding zoning board of appeals, upholding the building inspector's decision, simply stating in their opinion that it didn't apply to any point, but only applied from the start to the end of the driveway, which I also find kind of crazy, which means that if you have a big valley in the middle, you could have any slope you want because you would just measure from the start to the end point. So I found that decision to be basically creating a tremendous loophole in the zoning bylaws. But that is what the specific ruling was, and not how Greg Trevelyan tries to describe it. The other thing I also want to point out, he wants to try and talk about property value change if changes to the easement. I bought my property with an easement, expecting a certain level of how I can get in and out of that driveway. And that has changed, and that affects my property value also. So him to pretend like it's only his property is very also misleading. So I just want to set some of these records straight on this stuff, because he's been very misleading in the courts. He's just been very misleading to you. And I think it's important
Are we
to
recording this?
clarify
Like,
that.
what is going on right now?
Hold on.
I am giving you my opinions and my statements about what was said before and what was actually done to clarify that. Okay, so that's the points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All righty, so we will get the some input from town council and reconvene that on the 8th at 8. So is there any other thing that we want to discuss? That concludes everything that's on the agenda items. I don't know if anybody has anything else that they want to bring up for timely discussion.
I found some definitions of constructors' yards from some other communities. So it looks like we'll be able to come up with some examples for some of this stuff without too much difficulty, because other towns have had to address the same issue. So I'll compile some examples that I'll send around to everybody before the next meeting if you want.
Okay, so there was a couple of other ones too. So
Sales room,
Yeah.
service establishment, private vehicle for a business. You want some help with that. Floor area. I looked at that from a bunch of towns, and a lot of them are pretty simple, wall to wall times. Bang,
Length times width.
You get your number. And so I'll keep looking at those. But yeah, I'll throw together some, because particularly when it snows this weekend, I'll be sitting in the house here, so.
Yeah, so you heard a lot of snow?
Well, yeah, it keeps getting like 12 inches.
Wow.
Really?
And when's it supposed to start?
Friday night, late.
Yeah.
When did you want it to start?
Right, exactly then, because that means I won't have to work Saturday.
Well, you won't have to work Saturday because it's going to snow all day. And then
Excellent.
Sunday, you're going to be able to shovel all day.
Well, Glenn
Right.
will be here.
So right now they have it starting at 9 p.m. on Friday and stopping at 1 a.m. Sunday morning. And they have
Wow.
1.5 inches on Friday and then 12 inches on Saturday.
Wow.
Is that for Berlin or is that for?
That's for the South Berlin station.
Really?
Yep. And I've been looking at Putnam and East Machias, where my cousin is getting 15 inches. Putnam's getting 13 like we are. So I don't know. I don't trust them yet, but it keeps leaning in this direction more and more, and we're getting closer to Friday. So
Right.
we'll know more tomorrow. But yeah, so Saturday, just, get the hot chocolate out and the popcorn and.
Yeah.
So how long would
Hey.
you think it's going to take me to get to Rangeley, Maine on Sunday? Then it's normally 4 hours.
Oh, on Sunday?
You going by
Well-
sled or you going by car?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be going sledding Monday.
I was looking at my cousin's site for East Machias, and so he's way up, and his storm was going to be done Sunday about midday. So if you delay a little bit, you may very well just be following the thing, but I would think they'd be, I don't know,
Plowing and cleaning
a
up.
foot is a foot. It's
Exactly.
Yeah. Is Machias more coastal though? Because
Yeah.
Rangeley's pretty inland.
Well, that's the other thing. I'll look up Rangeley now, but yeah, Machias is on the coast, and usually they don't get hit.
Right.
Rangeley, Maine.
Well, the next day we're heading up to Eagle Lake, which is right on the border.
10-day forecast for Rangeley. Oh, let's see. Oh, they're only getting 7.
Oh, you'll be
That'll
fine.
do. That'll be great.
And actually, it's ending in Rangeley, not much different than it's ending here. So it's a coastal issue. That's why I think they're struggling, because it may very well peel away from us and go more out to the sea. So
Right.
cross your fingers, Carolyn.
Both of them. Awesome. Do you want a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adjourn this party. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask you to vote. Jay Teach,
Yes.
Carolyn McDonald,
Indeed.
Timothy Wheeler,
Most definitely.
Tom Sanford, aye. Thank you all.